We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, when we take the time to learn about the Declaration of Independence and the First Amendment, we empower ourselves. These words remind us that our voices matter and that freedom of speech and the press are the heart of our democracy. By educating ourselves, we become guardians of these freedoms, ready to stand up, speak out, and inspire others to keep them alive for generations to come.
The Declaration of Independence has to rely on natural law and natural rights. What they're really doing is saying we're breaking away from England, which is an act of high treason. They have to rely on natural law and on the idea that there's other law that governs us besides just the political laws of the state. There are higher laws, natural laws that we have to follow, and the tyranny of the British king has led to us withdrawing from the British crown because he committed crimes against natural law. And one of the crimes he committed was he arrested people who criticized him. And that's the genesis of the First Amendment, that in order to have a free and functioning government, you have to have the press able to report on what the government's doing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The 1920 case where the Supreme Court said that the Due Process Clause requires that the states must comply with the First Amendment free speech right. It's the first case where the Supreme Court uses the Due Process Clause to tell the states what they can and can't do concerning the Bill of Rights. And it's because that right to free speech is so important.
I think over the last however many decades, we're losing a commonality among who we are as a people. And I think what social media has allowed us to do is kind of find that everybody gets their own little microphone to announce to the world what they believe and feel, which wasn't the case in the past.
New York Weekly Journal, which was published before, when we were still colonies and before we were the United States. And so we were still under technically British rule at the time. There was something published that the England monarchy did not particularly like, so they tried to have the newspaper banned. So what happened is its editor, John Peter Zenger, was actually arrested for defamation. And so it ended up going to trial, and ultimately John Peter Zenger and the New York Weekly Journal won that case on the merits that what they were reporting, what the monarchy didn't like, was truthful. Because what was truthful, they had a right to say it. So as long as what they're reporting is the truth, it is not defamation.
When our country was formed, defamation, slander, libel were all known to the framers.
You can't sue the press for defamation unless they either lie or act with reckless disregard for the truth, because we want to protect the press in this very important role of reporting on public officials.
First Amendment is everything for a journalist. Our primary goal is to report facts, report truth, and if we have interference with that interferes with our job, it interferes with our rights, and it interferes with just educating the public in general.
Say that Facebook or Twitter is censoring you. Well, they might be censoring you, but not in a First Amendment relevant way, because Twitter and Facebook are not part of the government. They're not owned by the government. And so the First Amendment doesn't really apply there. Now, you can still complain about what's going on. There are lots of valid complaints to make about the way that private companies might restrict your speech. But those are free speech claims that don't trigger First Amendment analysis.
Because they are private companies, I don't think the government should censor those. I don't think that should be part of it. I think private companies, for the most part, should be left to regulate for themselves unless there is some sort of egregious abandonment of sort of basic principles. But for the most part, because they are private businesses, they should be left to have their own policies, their own disclosures, and their own expectations.
Crowded theater, like there are restrictions that basically we as a society have imposed. We need to start thinking about the applicability of those legal precedents to the digital world, because there are all sorts of new legal issues that are popping up through digital technology that the current laws don't really adequately address. So I personally would be more comfortable if we resolve these issues through policies, laws, and regulations, as opposed to just having private companies.
In conclusion, freedom of speech is a foundational principle of the Declaration of Independence, but how it is taught and understood can be influenced by interpretation, omission, or even distortion over time. When education reshapes or simplifies these ideas, it affects how citizens understand their rights and responsibilities. At the same time, freedom of speech limits government interference, not the actions of private companies. Private platforms have the right to set rules, restrict content, or remove users to maintain their own standards.